Hello. Men often seek beautiful wives, while women tend to look for wealthy husbands. In today's world, sometimes people value money more than human life. Some women spend their entire lives dreaming of marrying a rich man. Living like a queen with a wealthy husband might be considered an ideal life for many women. But is this truly the case in the story below? On the morning of February 7th, 2013, an Asian woman named Wang was waiting for her friend Navy to meet for coffee and chat. However, when Navy did not show up and could not be reached by phone, Wang grew increasingly worried and decided to visit Navy's home to check on her. Upon arrival, Wang encountered a distressed elderly white man, who introduced himself as Navy's husband, John Charlton. John informed Wang that his wife had left the house earlier that morning, which made Wang suspicious. Adding to her unease, two women in their 30s were present in the house, whom John claimed were his daughters from a previous marriage. Although this explanation seemed plausible, Wang remained unsettled. It was hard to believe that someone who had been laughing and having dinner with her the previous evening could simply vanish the next day. Furthermore, Navy had two young children and a beauty shop in Gold Coast, so her sudden disappearance was highly suspicious. Acting on her concern, Wang decided to investigate further. Using her familiarity with the layout of her friend's home from previous visits, she noticed that the carpet in the bedroom was unusually wet, and a long rug was missing. John explained that he had recently used a carpet cleaner, which accounted for these observations. Despite this, Wang was not reassured and chose to call the police. When the police arrived, they only found John. His two daughters had left. According to the police report, John's wife, Navy, was from Indonesia and had lived with him in Gold Coast after their marriage. John said that when he woke up at 6 a.m. that morning, he heard Navy mention going out, but he was too groggy to recall her destination. He described Navy as being very out of control during their initial conversation and hinted that she might have sold $70,000 worth of jewelry to pay fees. He expressed frustration, saying she should have brought that stupid head back home rather than wandering around, but later added that he was very concerned for her safety. When asked by the police if he had done anything excessive to his wife, John insisted that he was a philanthropist who had helped many poor families in the Philippines. He firmly claimed that he did not know where his wife was, what had happened to her, and had never harmed her. However, the next day, John flew with their two children, aged 7 and 9, to Indonesia. When the police contacted him, John stated that he had to travel for work, with his plane tickets booked well in advance, and he would return in 2 weeks, with his wife missing and the police actively investigating. It seemed strange that he would go on a business trip instead of staying to assist the investigation. John's actions raised further suspicion. Despite their doubts, the police had no grounds to arrest John without knowing whether Navy was alive or dead. Therefore, the priority was to find Navy. The police reviewed surveillance footage in the surrounding area multiple times. They reported that on the night before Navy disappeared, a gas station camera captured her driving a dark blue Volvo. By around 11 p.m., neighbors saw her at her home. From that point until the next morning, no one had seen her again. Navy seemed to have vanished without a trace. Consequently, the police sealed off the house as a crime scene and conducted a thorough search. On the carpet in the bedroom, they found Navy's urine. Other than that, there were no useful clues, no blood, no signs of a struggle, and everything in the house was very clean. 4 days later, on the afternoon of February 11th, investigators found Navy's car in the parking lot of a long-distance bus station. However, the station's surveillance cameras did not capture any images of Navy. Her social media account was no longer updated, and her bank card showed no transactions. Therefore, the police suspected that something unfortunate had happened to Navy. Currently, the prime suspect is her husband, John. Consequently, the police began examining John and Navy's marital relationship to find any motive for the crime. John Charlton owned 2 factories near Gold Coast that produced industrial lubricants, along with a mining investment project and a company he founded with his first wife in 1986. in which he held a 50% stake. John's total assets were around $7 million AUD. Before meeting Navy, John had divorced 5 times. In 2000, he met Navy in Indonesia. Born in 1975, Navy was 32 years younger than John. She lived on Java Island, Indonesia, and had never traveled abroad. But she had always dreamed of seeing the world. At the time they met, John was 57, and Navy was 25. John's assets then amounted to $2.2 million AUD, a sum Navy had never imagined. John was very attracted to Navy, who was young and beautiful. He pursued her enthusiastically. Navy, viewing John through rose-colored glasses, agreed to marry him less than a month after they started dating. Although she was John's 6th wife, Navy did not mind and even believed she had found true love. After marriage, Navy moved to Queensland with John. Initially, their married life was very sweet and happy. Navy bore 2 children for John, creating a happy family of 4. Although they settled in Australia, Navy frequently returned to Indonesia to be with her family and friends. To her loved ones, she was the epitome of a wealthy wife admired by everyone. However, by 2009, conflicts began to emerge between them. John started to display violent behavior, frequently hitting Navy, and he even maintained a mistress from the Philippines. Navy later discovered that John regularly visited seedy entertainment venues during business trips to the U.S. due to these issues. The couple often argued. Despite numerous disputes, their feelings for each other had changed, and Navy sought a boyfriend to fill her loneliness. Both understood that they were no longer faithful in their marriage, but they continued to live together for the sake of their children. About a year before Navy disappeared, the couple began living separately. Following their marital crisis, Navy became more independent. She opened a beauty salon in Australia, establishing her own business. This allowed her to support herself despite their separation. About 2 months before the incident, during Christmas 2012, John and Navy had a severe argument. Navy felt she could no longer tolerate her situation, but feared that John might take the children away. According to the investigation, Navy consulted a lawyer. The lawyer advised her that Australian law places significant emphasis on protecting the rights of children and women. If divorced, the wife was entitled to half of the assets. This advice reinforced Navy's decision to divorce John, and she ultimately decided to request a divorce. On the day before Navy disappeared, John received a letter from Navy's lawyer. The letter stated that Navy wanted 50% of John's assets, which amounted to approximately 3.5 million Australian dollars, and that they would share custody of their 2 children after the divorce. That evening, Navy and Ms. Wang had dinner at a restaurant and returned home around 11 p.m. Shortly after, Navy mysteriously vanished. This raised suspicions about whether John might be involved in Navy's disappearance and why his behavior seemed so unusual. Despite relentless efforts by the police, they were unable to find any leads on Navy's whereabouts. Over 3 years after the incident, a neighbor named Rachel Wiley provided new information. Rachel recalled that 2 years earlier, Navy had mentioned to her before a trip to the U.S. that if she did not return, it might be because John had killed her or hired someone to do so. Navy had asked Rachel to report to the police if she did not come back. However, after that trip, Navy did not mention anything similar to Rachel again. The day before Navy disappeared, Rachel had called her. Navy was picking up her children from school and mentioned her impending divorce. On the phone, she calmly stated that everything was over and that she would complete the divorce proceedings that day, leaving only the business matters of the beauty salon. That evening, John returned home and drove his car into the garage at high speed, crashing into the garage door and making a loud noise that drew the neighbor's attention. Another neighbor reported hearing what sounded like gunshots, but no one else heard anything similar. The police investigated John's factory and interviewed the workers. One worker revealed that a few months before Navy's disappearance, he had discovered a box in the factory labeled with John's name. Curious, he opened it and found a gun and some ammunition. Though he did not know the type of gun, Another worker noted that on the night of the incident, he had seen John drive to the factory at night, but the car stayed only a few minutes before leaving. This raised the question of why John hurried to the factory that night. A different employee reported receiving a call from someone claiming to be John's daughter, asking him to retrieve a box from John's house and deliver it to another daughter of John's. This box was the same one previously discovered. The two daughters were from John's first marriage and were both over 30 years old, exactly the women Ms. Wang had seen at John's house. After interrogating the daughters, Candace, the 34-year-old eldest, said that John had given her the box and instructed her not to open it. Although she never opened it, she thought it might contain some components and handcuffs, which made her uneasy. She asked someone to deliver the box to her sister Angela, who later hid it. Candace denied that John had given her the box the morning after Navy disappeared, but both sisters were indeed at their father's house that morning. The police believed that if Navy was killed at John's home, it was unlikely that a 66-year-old could move and clean up the crime scene without help. Thus, they questioned whether his daughters had assisted. By 2014, police discovered that John and Navy had previously lived in another house in Gold Coast, located in the Nathan area. This house had been extensively dug up and renovated a year after the incident. Investigators suspected it might hold clues and used excavation equipment to dig 4 meters deep on the property. They found 2 vehicles, a white Ford F-100 and a black Nissan Navara. Why had John buried these vehicles? On March 13, 2014, the Australian police issued a public reward of 250,000 Australian dollars for any valuable information regarding Navy's disappearance. This led to numerous tips from the public. A witness reported seeing Navy's car at the bus terminal on February 10th. The day before the car was found, there were clothes scattered around the car, and an elderly woman appeared very anxious. Opposite the car was a white Ford with a short, bald man and a young woman trying to start the car. The witness found the scene suspicious, especially the scattered clothes. Subsequent surveillance footage showed that the white Ford at the bus terminal was one of the 2 vehicles excavated from John's previous residence. Was the bald man the witness saw John? And were the 2 women his daughters? On January 28, 2015, a search team of 50 volunteers conducted a search and excavation near another of John's rural properties, covering an area of 3.6 hectares, but found nothing suspicious. On June 17, 2016, after 3 years of investigation, the police gathered 200 testimonies and finally had enough circumstantial evidence to arrest John Charlton and charge him with first-degree murder. However, the road from accusation to conviction was still long. As the investigation continued, it became apparent that behind John's charitable facade was a depraved and perverse individual. Detectives discovered that in the 1990s, John had a previous conviction for child sexual abuse. After his arrest, John repeatedly denied killing his wife. The police secretly arranged with Peter Ford, John's cellmate, to act as an informant. Peter, an experienced fraudster and money launderer with over 10 years of experience, agreed to extract a confession from John in exchange for a lighter sentence. Peter testified in court that on the night of March 31st, 2015, John broke down in the cell and confessed to him about killing Navy. John said he had used the weapon from the mysterious box to end Navy's life and then weighed her body. After 8 p.m., he took Navy's body to Southport and pushed it into the sea to prevent the body from being discovered by fishermen. John even added weights to Navy's body and punctured her stomach to prevent gas from causing the body to float. He did this because he didn't want Navy to receive half of his assets. John also used ammonia to thoroughly clean the room and carpet, leaving no traces of DNA or forensic evidence. However, John's lawyer argued that Peter's testimony did not match the initial case records and that Peter might be lying, although Peter vehemently denied the accusations of lying. His one-sided testimony was not entirely convincing. Was there still something hidden in this case? Just when it seemed like the case had reached a dead end, a man from the Philippines agreed to become a witness. The man, named Marshall, claimed that he and John had met on a dating app and had been romantically involved. Since 1998, John had been sponsoring poor families in the Philippines, including funding some students' college education. However, John required these students to fulfill his sexual demands as a form of payment. He would then offer additional support like repairing homes and providing food. John told the judge that this wasn't perverse but simply his own way of showing love. In 2011, John met Marshall on a dating platform. In early 2012, they met at a hotel in the Philippines. John asked Marshall, "Can you kill someone?" Marshall, though surprised, tried to stay calm and asked John who he wanted to kill. John replied that he wanted to kill his wife and added that if Marshall couldn't do it, he could help him find a hitman to kill Navy. John even offered $10,000 to have his wife killed discreetly. Marshall later told John that he would find a way to hire a hitman, but in reality, he didn't know anyone to contact. John believed him and urged Marshall to act quickly while Navy was in Thailand for cosmetic surgery. In emails, John described his wife as vile, cold, selfish, and greedy. He said she neglected their children and was seeing another man. If they divorced, John didn't want to see his wife become wealthy and didn't want to divide his assets. In April 2012, John transferred $2,500 to Marshall. Marshall responded that they could act once John was present. At this point, John was convinced that Marshall was working for him and had found a reliable hitman. However, Marshall only wanted to blackmail him. After discovering Marshall's extortion plan, John sent an additional $20,000. By July 2012, John emailed that due to personal reasons, he could no longer transfer money abroad. There were no further transactions between them. Confronted with Marshall's testimony in court, John claimed he asked Marshall to find someone for him because he needed a bodyguard. John said he frequented areas like Mindanao, which had many dangerous gangs, and he didn't dare go without a bodyguard. Regarding the purchase of weapons, he claimed it was solely for self-defense. Finally, after hearing testimonies from over 70 witnesses, the jury concluded that before her disappearance, Navy had been threatened by her husband and might have been subjected to emotional and psychological abuse in their relationship. The prosecutor argued that on the night Navy disappeared, a deadly act had definitely taken place in the bedroom, all in silence, without disturbing their two young children. However, due to the lack of direct evidence of the murder, on September 9, 2019, the Brisbane Supreme Court could only convict John of manslaughter and sentenced him to 15 years in prison. Unfortunately, he died of heart disease after serving only 1 year. The saying goes, fortune and misfortune are intertwined. Some may think marrying a wealthy man is a great fortune, but few understand that clouds at one level meet winds at another. Trying to wear shoes that don't fit will only cause more pain. Just like Navy in our story, who, in her haste, chose the wrong pair of shoes, leading to her untimely death. And John, who tried to keep his money, ultimately couldn't keep it safe, even though he had hidden his crimes well. So, this is the end of our video. What do you think about this case? What are your thoughts on money in life? Please leave your comments below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel to get the latest updates. Thank you, and see you next time.